We're really the number one independent inkjet head supplier to the industrial market. And the markets we play in, three major ones: industrials, packaging, and graphics. And in terms of our revenue, industrials is around 70%, packaging around 15%, and graphics about 10%, and then there are a few other smaller things. So if you look at industrials, by far the largest business in there is ceramic tiles, the decoration or digital decoration of ceramic tiles. That's probably 90% of the 70%, and represents 2/3 of the company's revenue. We are the market leader. You know, this is the print head, 1002, that's used there. It's actually also the print head that we use in the packaging segment, you know, both in coding and marking, in the digital printing of labels, and will be the print head we use in the area that we think is really quite transformational, which is direct-to-shape. Again, very, very versatile print head. It's also the one we use in wide format graphics, and actually can be used in a lot of advanced manufacturing areas as well, you know, such as 3D printing, you know, the printing of electronic components, printing of solar panels, medical sensing devices. So extremely versatile. And what makes it versatile is its ability to jet very abrasive materials or very viscous materials in very, very harsh environments. So, you know, like in ceramic tiles, you know, that's a pretty tough environment. Very dusty, you know, a lot of kilns, very hot, and you're jetting a very abrasive inorganic pigment. And then in packaging, you're quite often jetting quite viscous materials. They could be UV inks, they could be varnishes, all sorts of polymers, and likewise in graphics, it's typically UV inks. And then if you come to, you know, 3D printing, and this, by the way, was printed as one piece. It was UV printed. Likewise this. And here, you know, you're jetting a polymer, a very viscous polymer, at 75 degrees C, which is a pretty tough environment. So this print head is what enables that. Well, just in terms of barrier of entry, I mean, this is a pretty sophisticated manufacturing process, multiple steps, done in, you know, clean room, under clean room conditions. You know, you've got people wandering around in spacesuits. There's a lot of know-how in the manufacturing. It's not just about the IP. I mean, we have a number of patents, obviously. In total, we have, you know, a couple of hundred. But beyond that, it's a lot of process know-how, and, you know, and time to get to the sorts of yields and quality levels that it takes to be as robust as this print head is. You know, in very harsh environments, you know, it can last 4 or 5 years. Quite often, it's other parts of the device that fail before the print head. So, you know, ceramics is about 2/3 of the company's revenue, and China is about, you know, 50% of that, so about 1/3 of the company's revenue. And the reason for that, obviously, is China is sort of 50% of the world's production of ceramic tiles. So yeah, the company back end of last year, with the slowdown in the construction industry in China, you know, did get hit pretty hard. Since it stabilized, it stepped down second half of 2014. But since then has sort of stabilized pretty well. I mean, over time though, of course, you know, with you know, China being such a significant portion and ceramics being such a significant portion of the company's revenue, we do need to sort of diversify and reduce our dependence. And so, you know, the way to do that obviously is to grow in some of these other segments. And I think the one that's probably closest to home and will enable us to offset that dependence is really packaging. And particularly the whole area of direct-to-shape. I mean, what we're talking about there, just to be clear in terms of direct to shape, is printing direct to the container, okay, rather than, you know, requiring, for example, a label. So if I give one example, again, I don't know how well you can see this, but this was printed by a converter in the US. They printed this for Walmart, and they're printing direct on the bottle here. This is not a label. Now, conventionally, they would have done that with a shrink wrap label. The cost difference, doing that with a shrink wrap label, would have been around $4.50 per thousand. Doing it this way is 23 cents per thousand. So the cost benefit is very, very significant. The reason for that is you're taking at least 2 steps out of the production process. The need to prepare an analog plate and the need to actually traditionally print a label. And that, you know, gets to the sort of savings, you know, we're talking about. So very, very, very significant savings. The other thing is the sort of design freedom they have. So if we take this one, you know, this is a Procter & Gamble brand. Again, I know this, you know, may look like a label, but don't know how well you picked that up on the camera, but it isn't a label. It's printed direct. And you know, being able to do that sort of and respond very fast overnight, because you have a much shorter supply chain. The actual converter is doing the printing, the bottler is doing the printing. So he can respond very fast, you know, virtually overnight to an advertising campaign. And we're seeing that. We talked about that a little bit with this, which is the second largest brewer in Belgium. They launched a new beer. They've printed direct to the bottle these characters from a Belgian soap opera. And this is part of the advertising campaign. They've also launched an app that you can download, for example, on your iPhone. You point the iPhone at the character and the character talks to you. Or if you put 2 bottles together with 2 characters, they'll talk to one another. Now you can do that with a label, with a traditional label. The difference is you can respond instantly to the demand locally. So the minute you download that app, people know who you are. They know an awful lot about you. They know where you bought this beer. They know which character you prefer. And they can immediately print, for example, more of that character and supply that local supermarket with that character where you bought the beer in the first place. So it's that instant response to demand, which if they relied on their existing supply chain, would take much, much longer, and they may actually miss the boat. Okay, so design freedom and cost, I mean, are the major advantages. So I think it's going to be pretty transformational. The other thing I would say is, because of the technology we use, which is UV inks, you can actually apply and print on multiple substrates. So you can print on plastic, you can print on glass, you can print on an aluminium can. So it really does open up the whole packaging market. What the thin film print head will open up for us, and this is the thin film print head, it will print aqueous fluids, water-based fluids. So it starts to open up markets like commercial print, printing of books, newspapers, magazines, as well as textiles. Yeah, I'm looking to do some inorganic things. You know, traditionally the company's relied, 100% on organic growth. And I really want to try and accelerate our path into some of these new application spaces. I mentioned packaging, I mentioned, re-establishing ourselves in graphics. And I'd like to do it through inorganic means. Because, I think the organic side will take too long. So we're looking at a number of adjacencies. What I'm careful not to do is to compete directly with my OEM customers. So if there's a particular adjacency where they're not playing today, we might move up the food chain a little bit. Maybe even think about, building a printer. But clearly not in any market where we're working with, strong OEM partners. The other thing I'm interested in is looking at other components we might bring to our OEM partners for the fully integrated solution. So when they're building a printer or they're building a press, there are a number of elements there that I think we might be able to help them with. So I'm looking at trying to bring more value to them. The other area I'm very interested in is the Americas, because it represents today about 6-7% of our revenue. We're very, very underrepresented there. And so I'm looking at the US, and I think it would be a very good thing for us to propel ourselves in that market through inorganic means. For sure, we want to be double the size. Our plan, our strategy is to do that, to be at least 200 million by 2020. We have a little catchphrase internally that says we want to be. It's 220 by 2020. The way I think we need to do that is, like I said, is to grow in some of these other application spaces. So I'd like to see a more balanced and diversified portfolio, both from a product standpoint as well as geographically, our business spread. And what we've said as well is that we want to lead the digital inkjet revolution. And it sounds bold, but the company's done that already in 2 major markets. It did it in wide format graphics, it did it in ceramics. And so I think technologies like direct to shape and thin film should enable us to do that again, get a few more under our belt.